What if I told you medieval farmers were running some of the most efficient systems on Earth centuries before tractors, chemistry, or smart farming apps? These people weren't fumbling around in the dark ages. They were conducting an orchestra of soil, sunlight, and survival. And it all started with something deceptively simple: the three-field rotation. Instead of exhausting one plot until it turned to dust, they split their land into thirds: one for grains like wheat or rye, one for legumes that restored nitrogen, and one left fallow to rest and recover. Every year, the fields traded places like dancers in a well-rehearsed pattern. It wasn't random. It was a living calendar of fertility that tripled yields over time. While other regions starved, these folks were harvesting smarter, not harder. The land itself became self-healing. But the real revolution came when they started cutting deep into the heavy plow. Imagine a curved iron blade, so tough it could tear through the thick, wet soils of northern Europe that oxen alone once feared. This wasn't just a tool. It was a social event. Villagers gathered to watch the first slice of black earth turn rich and steaming in the cold air. That iron edge didn't just flip dirt, it flipped civilization. Suddenly, lands once dismissed as useless marsh or clay became prime farmland. Every furrow was a declaration: this land will feed us. And speaking of feeding, water was the next miracle ingredient. Medieval engineers turned moving rivers into engines. Monasteries led the way, building water wheels that ground grain, pressed oil, and even powered early sawmills. These wooden giants didn't roar like machines. They hummed like living things. Channels carved with hand tools diverted just enough flow to spin a wheel without starving the river. Every splash, every creak, was proof of a world that ran on rhythm instead of fuel. That constant motion turned time itself into labor. They didn't waste what the water carried either. Runoff from mills irrigated gardens, fed fish ponds, and kept compost heaps damp and alive. And that composto, that was pure genius. Long before organic became a buzzword, peasants were layering straw, manure, ash, and kitchen scraps into steaming towers of renewal. They didn't need fertilizer in a bag. They built it from scratch. Bones for calcium, ashes for potassium, dung for nitrogen. Each heap was alive, an alchemist's cauldron bubbling with the quiet chemistry of decay. When the farmers spread that rich, black soil back over their fields, they weren't just feeding crops. They were feeding the future. None of this happened in isolation. The open field system made sure of that. No fences, no private greed, just long, shared strips tilled and harvested in unison. It was cooperation disguised as survival. Every hand mattered, every plow shared, every harvest divided by custom and trust. At dawn, you could hear the rhythm of work echo across the valley, the scrape of iron, the creak of leather, the soft murmur of neighbors who knew that one lazy man could cost them all. In those same fields, they discovered something the modern world is only starting to rediscover. Plants thrive in communities. Monks called them companion guilds. Beans fed barley. Garlic protected roses. Basil kept pests off tomatoes centuries before anyone used the word pesticide. The peasants didn't study plant chemistry. They simply watched what nature was already doing and copied it. Their gardens looked chaotic, but they were masterpieces of balance, self-fertilizing, self-defending, and endlessly productive. Even their animals joined the choreography. After harvest, pigs rooted through the stubble, loosening soil while eating leftover grain. Sheep followed, trimming grass and compacting the top layer. Cows came last, their manure sealing the deal. Each species doing its part: no waste, no overwork, no spreadsheets required. It was ecosystem engineering done with instinct and patience. They didn't need meteorologists either. The sky was their teacher. A red sunrise warned of wind. A halo around the moon meant frost. The monks even charted it, linking every shift in weather to saints' days and lunar phases. It wasn't superstition, it was statistics in rhyme form. The calendar itself became a scientific tool. So on the waxing moon, harvest on the waning, prune before Lent, rest at Epiphany. They weren't reading screens. They were reading centuries of observation written across the stars. And when it came to seeds, the heart of everything, they treated them like sacred relics. Monasteries served as the genetic banks of Europe, storing jars of barley, rye, beans, and herbs labeled in Latin script. Every seed saved was a promise. Monks traded varieties across kingdoms, testing which survived frost or flood, recording it all in quiet, ink-stained precision. Some even soaked their seeds in herbal brews before planting willow bark, nettle, or compost water to wake the life inside. Science would later call it pre-germination treatment. They just called it wisdom. But even with all that planning, pests were a constant battle. And once again, they didn't fight nature. They recruited it. Birds were their soldiers. Farmers built perches and planted berry bushes near fields to attract sparrows and starlings, which devoured caterpillars and beetles by the hundreds. Frogs and hedgehogs patrolled gardens as living pest control. Beetles, spiders, even worms were protected, not poisoned. The fields buzzed, crawled, and rustled with life. And somehow that chaos made everything work. They rotated crops before rotation had a name, breaking pest cycles naturally by never giving the same soil the same burden twice. Step back and you can see the pattern. Every piece connected. Crops fed animals. Animals fed soil. Soil fed crops again. The monastery's records. The farmer's eyes. The mill's steady hummel, tuned to the same frequency. Nothing wasted. Nothing random. They didn't just survive the medieval world, they optimized it. And maybe that's the real miracle. A society that understood balance without blueprints, data, or carbon capture. Just calloused hands, sharp minds, and a shared instinct that the earth, if listened to, would always answer back. What if the Dark Ages weren't so dark, at least not in the fields? Medieval farmers built a heat and harvest machine out of soil, seasons, and stubborn patience. It opens with that quiet masterstroke, the three-field rotation. 1/3 sown to grain, 1/3 to legumes that refill the ground, 1/3 resting. Then they swap, year after year, like clockwork. No guesswork, no burnout. The land exhales, then roars back. Yields rise, risk drops, bellies fill. Next comes the iron hero that turns mud into bread, the heavy plow. Picture a curved coulter biting deep into cold, clay-rich earth oxen leaning hard into the harness. The soil rolling over in glossy, black ribbons. Suddenly the useless north wet fields, stubborn turfpick, comes the breadbasket. Every furrow is a frontier line pushed forward. You can almost hear the village cheer when that first wet slice flips. Water makes the third move, not just drinking working. Monks and millers laced rivers with channels and wheelhouses, setting wooden paddles, spinning like slow, patient hearts. The wheel grinds grain, presses oil, saws timber, even lifts water to dry gardens. No smoke, no coal, just steady rhythm. Overflow from mill races slips into irrigation ditches. And suddenly parched beds wake up, without a single bucket lifted. Fertility isn't purchased. It's composed. Straw sweepings, dung, kitchen peelings, ash from last night's fire layered, poked for air, turned when steaming. Calcium from crushed bone, potassium from ash, nitrogen from manure, a peasant's periodic table. The heap breathes, darkens, sweetens. When it returns to the field, crops surge. Not a drop wasted, not a crumb ignored. None of this works alone. The open field system binds it together. Long strips, shared plows, agreed schedules. You seed when the village seeds, reap when the village reaps. Quarrel if you must over borders, then shoulder the plow together anyway. Survival is collaborative. The landscape becomes one collective engine. Timed to the bell and the weather. Zoom into the gardens, and you see another layer of brilliance. Companions. Beans sidle up to barley and feed it from the roots. Garlic stands guard by roses. Basil confuses whatever is hunting tomatoes. Beds look wild to modern eyes, but every pairing is a handshake. Fewer pests, richer soil. Better flavor earned, not with spray, but with proximity. Animals aren't afterthoughts, they're co-workers. After harvest, pigs churn the stubble, noses plowing, teeth cleaning. Sheep drift through, mowing and manure. Cattle follow, heavier hooves pressing in the goodness. Rotations continue. Animals to field, field to animals, barn to heap, heap to field again. Nothing sits idle. Everything returns. And when the sky speaks, farmers listen. A ring around the moon, a red dawn, the direction of a wind that wouldn't quit. Monastic calendars map saints' days to sowing windows. Lunar cycles whisper when to plant, when to prune, when to stay patient. Call it lore if you like. They called it observation centuries of Itritan, in ink and memory. Seeds are sacred. Monasteries keep them like relics. Jars of rye, barley, peas, herbs labeled in a careful hand. Traded across valleys, tested through frost and flood. Some are soaked in willow or nettle infusions before sowing, a quiet nudge toward life. Records track which lines endure, which flavors deepen, which ears fill. Genetics on parchment, guarded by silence and routine. The final battle is with what eats the harvest before you do. Birds are enlisted, not banish perches, and berry edges lure them in to feast on caterpillars. Beetles and spiders get habitat, not poison. Trap crops pull pests away from the main show, and the rotation itself, field to field, crop to crop, breaks the cycles that would otherwise break the people. The whole farm hums, crawls, and flutters with life and, because it does, it feeds everyone. Look at the system as a whole, and the pattern emerges. Rotation multiplies fertility. Iron opens new ground. Water wheels multiply hands. Compost closes loops. Cooperation synchronizes labor. Companions fortify beds. Livestock power the churn. Sky reading fine-tunes timing. Monasteries safeguard memory. And nature's hunters keep balance. No waste. No shortcuts. Just 1,000 smart moves. Stacked. Medieval. Absolutely. Primitive. Not a chance. By mid-season, the entire countryside feels alive, every sound and scent stitched into one great working rhythm. Dawn brings the low groan of oxen harnesses, the thud of wooden wheels, and the sharp scent of wet soil, freshly turned. From a distance, the fields shimmer like armor under sunlight, rows running straight as scripture. Farmers wipe sweat from their brows with the same hands that just guided iron through clay. And children chase birds from the grain. The air hums with effort and faith. The heavy plow didn't just transform fields, it transformed society. Suddenly, food wasn't a gamble, it was a craft. The northern soils that once drowned seeds now bore thick wheat and barley, their stalks bending under gold weight. Every deep furrow was a promise that hunger might skip this winter, and that promise rippled outward. Villages grew, trade routes opened, mills multiplied. You can almost feel the pulse of civilization quickening, powered by mud and muscle. Don't walk along the river, and you'll find the heartbeat of that new age turning in wood and water. Water wheels groan gently in the current, sunlight flashing off their slick paddles. Millers test gears greased with tallow. Monks record the flow in careful script. It's hypnotic, each creak and splash perfectly timed. Each drop of water pulling double duty. What began as grain grinding soon powered hammers, saws, and bellows. Streams became veins of motion, carrying not just water but energy itself. The air smells of damp moss and flower dust, a perfume of labor. But the real secret lies behind the barns, where dark heaps steam in the cool dawn. Compost alchemy, made simple. Layers of straw, ash, and dung pulse with slow heat. You can see it, threads of vapor rising like prayers. The farmers turn it carefully, pitchforks biting deep, releasing the rich, earthy musk that means new soil is being born. They don't waste a thing. Kitchen scraps, bones, soot, even old wool, all thrown into the great cauldron of renewal. It's not just rot, it's resurrection. When spring comes, that black living soil will slide into furrows like silk. In the village commons, cooperation keeps time. No one owns the land outright, yet everyone depends on it. At sunrise, lines of peasants march side by side, their strips indistinguishable from one another, their efforts shared. When one plow breaks, neighbors lend theirs. When a child falls sick, another family tends the rows. The open field system isn't charity, it's survival by design. The reeve walks the boundaries each night, tallying progress and whispering quiet praise for even furrows. To an outsider, it might look chaotic. To those inside it, it's harmony. Just beyond the hedgerows, the monks' gardens glow like jewels, geometry made fertile. Every bed bursts with diversity. Garlic flanks, cabbage, basil curls near beans, and roses rise above thyme and sage. Bees drift lazily, oblivious that they're ensuring next season's bounty. The monks plant, not in rows, but in relationships. They know tall plants cast shade, deep roots pull minerals, and pungent herbs confuse pests. Every leaf, every blossom, has a partner and a purpose. They don't call it companion planting, but that's exactly what it is. When harvest ends, animals take the stage. Pigs root through stubble, snorting and churning the ground into soft tilth. Sheep graze next, nibbling low and trampling in manure. Cattle follow like slow engines, their weight pressing life deeper into the soil. The fields rest but never sleep. Each hoofprint, each dropping, is a quiet investment in the next season's growth. Even the geese get their turn, patrolling for weeds and scattering pests. The land and the creatures work in unison, an endless loop of digestion and renewal. Overhead, the weather plays its eternal game, but the farmers aren't blind to its rules. They read the sky like scripture. A red sunrise warns of rain. Crows nesting low mean storms. A clear halo around the moonfrost by morning. No barometers, just memory. The monks keep records beside their psalms. Which days rain came, when the rivers froze, when blossoms appeared early or late. Their calendars glimmer with precision, planting days, marked by lunar phase. Pruning tied to the saints' feasts. Harvest timed to the waning moon. The system is part religion, part meteorology, and entirely practical. Then comes the sacred act of seed-keeping. Inside cool cloisters, shelves hold earthen jars labeled in careful Latin. Each jar hums with potential beans from last year's miracle yield. Barley that endured the late frost, herbs that thrived in shade. Monks test germination by candlelight, soaking seeds in herbal water, nettle for vigor, willow for growth. They trade these treasures across kingdoms, preserving not just food but resilience. Every seed is a story, and every monastery is a library of life. When spring returns, the ritual repeats. But not exactly. The monks adjust for last season's lessons, the flood that took the rye, the drought that spared the beans. They refine, adapt, record. Knowledge grows like a vine, looping through generations. Farmers come and go, but the wisdom remains, written in the soil and sung in the turning of the wheel. And through it all, one truth hums quietly beneath every shovel and prayer. Nothing in the medieval world stood alone. Water fed mills, mills fed fields, fields fed people, people fed faith. It wasn't progress by invention, it was progress by attention. They didn't just survive nature, they collaborated with it, and in doing so, they built a world where even the humblest handful of dirt was alive with intention. By late autumn, the fields fall quiet, but that silence is deceptive. Beneath the stubble and frost, life still hums. The peasants know it, they can feel the faint warmth of the earth even under their boots. They've gathered their harvest, stored their grain, salted their meat, and stacked firewood high, yet they never truly stop working. Winter, to them, isn't rest, it's preparation in disguise. Around the edges of the village, smoke curls from low chimneys. Inside, homes glow amber with firelight and the slow rhythm of survival. Every wall, every beam, every thatched roof was built with purpose, and every one of them holds secrets to warmth. These cottages are proof that medieval ingenuity wasn't limited to the fields. It extended right into the bones of their homes. Take those strange, mud-packed walls, daub and wattle, the so-called poor man's architecture. Thin hazel or willow strips woven into a tight lattice, then packed thick with clay, straw, and yes, even manure. Crude, maybe. Brilliant. Absolutely. Those countless tiny air pockets trapped within acted like primitive insulation panels, keeping cold out and warmth in. Air, they somehow knew, was nature's quietest heat keeper, and everything needed to build them came from within walking distance. No quarry, no brick kiln, no coin, just hands, patience, and earth. Even the roofs followed nature's blueprint. Thatched straw reeds, or wheat stalks, layered in thick, overlapping rows formed a living blanket above their heads. Each bundle trapped air, shed rain, and breathed just enough to prevent rot. A good thatch roof could last 15 years or more, if tended with care. You could watch water slide off its surface like it was repelled by magic. While the air beneath stayed warm and dry, entire villages would gather for rethatching days, singing, drinking, working side by side. Maintenance was a celebration of survival itself. At the heart of every home burned the open hearth, a flickering, smoky miracle. It wasn't just a place to cook. It was the household's pulse. The flames licked upward, light painting faces in bronze and gold. The smoke drifted slowly through rafters, coating them in soot but also sealing them against pests and rot. Every evening, families circled close, their laughter and stories rising with the heat. You could smell stew simmering in iron pots, barley, root vegetables, sometimes a sliver of pork if luck had been kind. The warmth spread unevenly but steadily, sinking into stone floors and the bodies huddled together above them. Peasants learned to manage fire like an art. Too small and the cold crept in. Too large and you'd burn through winter's wood by Christmas. They became masters of ember, banking covering the coals at night with ash to keep them alive until morning. When dawn came, a breath and a twig brought flame back to life. No matches, no spark wheels, just muscle memory and faith. Not everyone could afford wood, though. Many turned to peat's ancient gift, dug from bogs and dried in blocks. It burned slow and steady, a quiet, smoky heat that perfumed the air with sweet decay. In regions where forests were sparse, peat was gold. Families spent summer months slicing and stacking it to cure in the sun, knowing each dark brick meant one less night of shivering come January. But heat wasn't only in the fire, it was in the stones themselves. The cleverest peasants discovered that dense river stones, heated in the hearth all day, could hold warmth through the night. Wrapped in cloth or tucked beneath straw mattresses, they radiated gentle heat like bottled sunshine. Children drifted to sleep, clutching those warm stones, their faces lit by the last glow of embers. The science of it was simple. The result was profound. It turned the raw elements of their world into comfort. Even the positioning of their homes spoke of quiet genius. Houses faced south to drink every drop of winter sun. Doors turned away from prevailing winds. Thick stone walls soaked up daylight and released it after dusk, like medieval solar panels. Clusters of cottages shared walls, and warmth an unspoken alliance against the cold. Neighbors' fires helped heat each other's homes, and the entire village became a single breathing organism, conserving energy the way a flock conserves heat in flight. Inside, wool ruled all, layer upon layer, linen next to skin, then wool tunics, cloaks, hose. It wasn't fashion, it was physics. Each layer trapped air, building invisible walls of warmth. Boots were stuffed with straw, hands wrapped in rags, faces hidden under hoods lined with fur or felt. By night, they didn't undress. They slept fully clothed, wrapped in wool blankets, heavy as armor. The poor might own only 2 outfits, but those garments were miracles of endurance, patched, repaired, and worn until the fabric became part of the body. Warmth was also a community affair. Families of 8 or 10 crammed into a single room, sleeping close, children in the middle, elders near the hearth. Even the family dog earned its keep, curled at someone's feet. On the harshest nights, multiple families gathered in one hall, sharing stories, food, and the collective heat of 30 breathing bodies. It wasn't overcrowding. It was survival by design. Every person, every heartbeat, was another flicker of warmth against the cold. And when even that wasn't enough, they turned inward. They ate warmth, thick stews of barley, beans, and fat simmered for hours, the heat of digestion fueling the fire inside their bodies. A mug of hot mead before bed, broth in the morning, fermented vegetables for stamina. They didn't know the term metabolism, but they understood its power. Food was fuel, warmth, medicine, and ritual all at once. By February, the air softened. The frost began to retreat, and the first drips of meltwater trickled down thatched eaves. The villagers emerged like bears from hibernation, stiff but alive, their cheeks red, their laughter back. Every chimney, every plowed field, every steaming compost pile was proof of one thing: intelligence was never the privilege of the modern. These people had survived the impossible with nothing but observation, cooperation, and respect for what the world offered. And as they watched the sun rise over fields waiting to be sown again, they didn't need thermometers or engineers to tell them the truth. They'd beaten winter once more, not through luck, but through wisdom written in mud, wool, and fire.